This is SimpleSoftware 104, Operator Training, Scanning and Indexing with SimpleIndex. This is the course designed to teach those people who will be actually performing the scanning and indexing a little bit about how to navigate around the SimpleIndex interface and how to perform scanning and indexing using SimpleIndex. So you sit down at the computer and you are ready to scan a document. So the first thing you do is you run SimpleIndex. And assuming this option is selected, the first thing that happens is that the Open Configuration dialog is displayed. And if your system administrator was good to you, they set it up so that the configurations for the documents that you want to scan are all in the default folder that opens automatically. And so you see your job configuration here, and you select it and hit open. So now you're in the SimpleIndex application and you have the selected job open. And what the job configuration did was configure the index fields that you'll use to label the documents that will be processed with this job. This data entry demo is designed to use the scanner to capture some files, and then has these 5 manual input fields that demonstrate the different field types. So to start scanning with SimpleIndex, or to start processing with any type of job, whether you're scanning or processing existing files from your hard drive, you always hit the green light Run Job button. And for scanning configurations, the scanner settings will pop up automatically. And if your scanner remembers these settings and you have them set the way you want, you can disable this so that scanning starts immediately. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. So we hit the scan button. This particular window will be different depending on the model scanner that you have. And in this configuration, we have it set to display this prompt to ask you if you want to scan more pages. And this is really handy if the size of the batch that you want to scan is larger than the size of your document feeder, and you have to load the batch in multiple sections. This prompt will let you load the next set of documents and then hit yes, and then it starts scanning again immediately. You can also disable this prompt if all your batches will just have one set of documents. So we're going to say no, and then the automated processes happen. In that case, we did deskew and despeckle, which straightened the page a little bit from the crookedness that was in the scanner. And so now we're actually in the data entry interface for SimpleIndex. Here we see the images displayed on the left, and our index fields on the right are now enabled, and we're able to type into them. So these fields are set up just to demonstrate the different types of manual data entry that you might do. A text field lets you type in anything, so any value you type will be accepted there. A numbers field only allows numbers. If you type a letter in a numbers field, it'll turn red and you won't be able to save the field. A date field will let you type a date in any format, but it'll always format it in year, month, day when you tab out of the field. So as you can see, it reformats the date automatically when I hit tab and go to the next field. A template field forces you to enter data in a certain pattern. In this case, we have 3 letters followed by 3 numbers. This is what that pattern signifies. So if we type in ABC 1, 2, 3, it turns blue. But if we type anything else, or anything besides 3 letters and 3 numbers, it won't work. And then a list field lets you pick from a drop-down list. With list fields, you can also type the first letter, and it'll automatically fill this in. depending on the list, depending on how many items are in the list, it's usually much faster to type the value than it is to actually pick it with the mouse. When you're finished indexing a file, you have to click Save Index in order to save the values that you entered. If you navigate to the next page using the document navigation buttons, you will lose anything that you typed on this page. You have to click Save Index. And the reason for that is to allow you to undo changes that you make accidentally by just clicking on the page navigation button. So you must click Save Index. Now you can click it with the mouse, but if you keep our motto in mind, how many clicks does it take to scan my documents, you want to minimize the amount of interaction with the keyboard and mouse that you have. And so we made it so that you can click Enter on the keyboard, and it will do the same thing as clicking the Save Index button with the mouse. At all times when you are scanning and indexing, it's important to keep in mind how many clicks you're taking to perform the scanning and indexing that you're doing, and if there's any shortcuts available that will allow you to reduce that number, you should always take advantage of it. So we can see in this configuration we have the first 4 fields set up to forward the value from the previous page. So when we go to the second page, we see the values are already filled in with the same values from page 1 that we entered. The forwarded values are in blue, which signifies that the values have not been saved. If we page back to the first page, we see the values are all in black because we click Save Index. The list field is configured not to forward, which will blank out the field every time and force you to enter a value on every page. In this configuration, the default field should have been set to the list field, but that was overlooked by the person who configured this job. Granted, that was me, but as the operator, you should look for these things, and if you know that you have to tab down to the list field every single time you pull up a page, then it's worth it to mention to the person that configured the job, excuse me, if you just make the list field the default field, I won't have to hit tab 4 times, and I will reduce the number of clicks it takes to scan my documents. There's several options available to zoom in and pan around on the documents. They're all under the mouse action box here. The mouse action box was designed to make it very easy to switch between different tasks that you can do with the mouse. So, to zoom in on an image, you click the zoom in mouse action, and you can draw a box anywhere on the image, and it will zoom in to the box that you drew. Notice that when you do zoom in, it automatically changes to the hand pan feature, letting you drag the image around. And that's another way of saving a click, because generally after you zoom in, the next thing you want to do is be able to move the image around in your zoomed in view. In your toolbar, you can automatically adjust the size to the page width, the full page height, or zoom in and out using the magnifying glass. From the right-click menu, you can also zoom out, as well as access several of the other functions available, like rotate, deskew, and despeckle, which I'll show you in a second. If the page comes out sideways or upside down, your rotation buttons are right here, and that lets you rotate the page left and right. The rotation is saved automatically, so the image is resaved as soon as you hit the button. You've seen the page navigation function, which brings you to the previous and next page in the file or the batch. The document navigation buttons are designed to navigate between multi-page documents within a batch. Since all the files in this batch are single-page documents, the document navigation essentially performs the same function as the page navigation. If we were processing multi-page files, then to get to page 2, 3, and 4 within a single file, you would use the page navigation buttons and use the document navigation buttons to go from one file to the next. The grid view is available to you, and that gives you a nice overview of all the index information that you've entered and lets you quickly jump to one of the documents in your batch so that you can edit the index information. And this is particularly useful for reviewing the batch or when you get to the end of a batch and it tells you that you're missing a field on one of your documents. You need to find quickly which document you haven't indexed yet and go right to it. And when you get to the end of the batch and you save the last index, as long as everything has been fully indexed correctly, it'll prompt you if you want to release the batch. When you click yes, this batch is complete. It exports the files and the index information that you've entered, and you're completely done with this batch. If one of your required fields is missing, it actually won't let you get to that point. And so now we click yes to export the batch, and we're done. So let's take another look at some other scenarios. We just saw how to run SimpleIndex from the normal program icon, open a batch, and run it. It's also possible to save the batch file to an icon on your desktop and run it just by double-clicking it. And so we're going to run our invoice with Zone OCR demo. And when you run it from the desktop icon, you see that the processing starts automatically. It doesn't wait for you to hit the Run Job button. In this example, we're using OCR, which can also often be a very slow process. So if your OCR is taking very long, you can always minimize it, and you can see the progress in your taskbar. So this lets you do other things while the job is processing, and then when it's complete, it'll come back. OCR jobs are designed to automate the indexing process. So in this example, all the indexing is complete after the OCR is finished. In these scenarios, typically all you have to do is review the images and the index information to make sure that all the numbers are recognized correctly and that the image quality is okay. Now here on this page we see there's a blank page that has been automatically deleted by the blank page deletion function. However, let's say we didn't want to have this page deleted. The little X icon in your toolbar will mark or unmark the page for deletion, and you see the big red X goes away when you unmark it, and when you mark it for deletion it comes back. Also down here in your status bar it tells you whether or not the current page is marked for deletion. So that's how you delete a page. If you happen to notice that the page is very crooked and you haven't done an automatic deskew, you can manually deskew using this button. Of course, this page is perfectly straight, so you can't see much. You can also remove speckles if you've ever copied documents and had your contrast set wrong. You've seen what a speckle is. Despeckle will attempt to remove some of that from the image. Of course, once again, our image is perfectly clean here. In this OCR configuration, all of the index information is already saved because it was read with the OCR. So you don't actually have to hit Save Index unless you change the value. Also available on the toolbar is the Undo button. So if you mess up the index value and put something in wrong and you want to go back to where it was, you can hit Undo and that will reverse your changes. Undo also works on the crop and annotation functions as well. Speaking of cropping and annotations, the crop function lets you crop a document down to the box that you draw. And the Annotate function lets you use this toolbar to perform a variety of annotation functions, and annotations are basically the equivalent of taking notes, like sticky notes, and doing the electronic equivalent of that. And we won't get into very much detail about what all of these annotations do, but to access them, you click Annotate from the mouse action button. And if you click the Undo button, all your changes will be reverted back. The Undo, Delete are all accessible from the right-click menu. They're all also accessible from the Index menu, Undo, Delete. There's also Save and Save All, which I'll get to in a second. The Process menu has the rotate left and right functions and deskew and despeckle. You also see here the shortcut keys for rotate and despeckle and deskew. All of the functions have shortcut keys. Shift Delete for deletion, Control Z for undo. Using these shortcut keys is much faster than actually picking up the mouse and clicking the appropriate toolbar button. So if I want to rotate, I hit Control R to rotate right, and I don't have to take my hand off the keyboard while I'm indexing. Memorizing these shortcut keys and using them to their fullest extent is a great way to improve your productivity with SimpleIndex. So for this OCR configuration, since all of the index information is already correct, this is where the Save All button comes into play. The Save All button will save the entire batch with all of the current index information that is in there and basically do the same thing as going to page 1 and clicking Save Index over and over again until you get to the end of the batch. And it's a nice, easy way to save all of the current index information and complete the batch without having to click Save Index over and over again. So we click Save All, and it immediately goes to the end of the batch and asks us to release it. And in this example, the output folder is displayed automatically after we release the batch. And we can see that folders were created for each of the account numbers that we entered. And the file name is made up of the order number and company that were OCR'd from these documents. And so this is the whole goal of scanning and indexing with SimpleIndex, is to take scanned images and output organized, structured folders and files that you can find. So this concludes SimpleSoftware 104. You should now be able to easily pick up any scanning configuration and run it and perform the indexing and export without any problems.